Thank you for listening to WQPH 89.3 FM Shirley-Fitchburg, Queen of Perpetual Help, and welcome to another edition of WQPH's Local Matters. On this week's broadcast, we bring you sister station WSFI 88.5 FM as they present Pro-Life Today. Pro-Life Action League founders Joe and Ann Sheidler discuss the background of the founding of the Pro-Life Action League, and they also present Racketeer for Life, their new book, and this broadcast was from 2017. Thank you, as always, to Angela Tomlinson, who produces each episode. If you would like a copy of this broadcast, visit WSFICatholicRadio.org.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
You will once again be fighting for our freedom, not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live.
From the WSFI studio in Libertyville, Illinois, this is Pro-Life Today with your host, Joe Sheidler.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro-Life Today on WSFI, that's 88.5 FM, Catholic Radio. I'm your host, Joe Sheidler, and today my guest is actually me, because the hostess is going to be my wife, Ann Sheidler, and we're going to talk about a new book that's going around the country. It's called Racketeer for Life. It's a book that I wrote about the 44 years of activism in the pro-life movement. And so welcome, Ann, as the hostess.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate this role reversal today, and I get a chance to interview you about what's in Racketeer for Life. I, of course, lived most of what's in Racketeer for Life, but there's also some background in the days before I was part of your life, so we'll talk about that a little bit too. But first, I'd like to talk about the title of the book. This book is called Racketeer for Life, Fighting the Culture of Death from the Sidewalk to the Supreme Court. We lived the whole racketeer thing for many, many years, so we're very familiar with what that title means. But for anybody who isn't familiar with the racketeer trial, etc., fill in our listeners as to what that title means.
Well, from the sidewalk to the Supreme Court, that's just sort of the sequence. I started out on the sidewalk. As soon as I read Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton, and saw what atrocities they were, both those two twin decisions in the Supreme Court, I knew that our country was in big trouble, because every baby, every child, from conception until birth, was now removed from protection of the government. There was no protection. That child was as good as nothing. And a woman, for any reason at all, if you read Doe v. Bolton, you see that for any reason, because she just has to say, I would be upset, I wouldn't be happy with this baby, I don't want to be pregnant, I'm not ready to be pregnant. She could have an abortion. Well, she needed no reason at all. So that just struck me so hard, and at the time, you were pregnant.
Yeah, this was very personal for us because I was 4.5 months pregnant when Roe v. Wade came out, and we were dumbfounded that our government wouldn't give any value to this unborn child I was carrying.
No, and I was working at the time as an account executive for a public relations firm, and I got so engrossed in the whole abortion question, I started reading everything I could find. I went over to the Illinois Right to Life Committee offices and took out all the pamphlets and material that they had. And so my boss called me in one day and said, Joe, I think you've lost interest in your clients. You're totally absorbed in this whole abortion thing. And have you considered the possibility of going full-time fighting abortion? And I said, Paul, I can't. How would I make a living? And he said, well, you've had experience in public relations and all. You'll be able to make it. And he was almost firing me, but at the same time, he was understood my engrossment in the abortion issue. And so I remember I came home and said, I'm going to go I don't know if I was certain right at the time, because I did stay. They let me stay on, and paid me half salary, and I was able to keep my insurance. Remember, because they had very good.
They had good insurance, right?
So anyway, I set up a little office actually in our house, and started going to find out where the abortion clinics were, and then finding other people that were interested in activism. Because I thought you had to do more than just study abortion and feel bad about it and try to do work to get laws passed and all that.
Well, of course, we thought, too, that the American people would reject abortion if they just understood that the unborn baby is as a human being. So we thought, this is the key, publicize the reality of who this unborn baby is, and Americans would rise up in indignation about abortion. So we started the Chicago office for pro-life publicity, intending to run ads in the papers, just describing what an unborn baby's, the heart beating at 21 days and the brain waves at 42 days, and that the baby has fingernails and fingerprints at 9 weeks. All these little facts that we figured would convince people
you can get the heartbeat, right?
That they had to protect human life.
Well, it's interesting that you really got me interested in abortion when in the fall of 1972, before Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton came down. And we didn't even know there were these cases before the Supreme Court, but they were having a rally in Chicago in October of 1972, and you'd promised somebody that you would come to the rally. And so it was a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and I was going to stay home, watch the Notre Dame game, and you said we had to go to this rally. So we packed our 3 boys in the car, and we drove down. And as we were approaching the rally, which I think was in the Civic Center.
What they now call Daley Plaza.
Daley Plaza, right. And I think one of the speakers was Henry Hyde. Anyway, they handed me A Life and Death, which was printed by Jack Wilkie. Dr. Jack Wilkie had this out. And it had pictures of the baby in the womb and then the baby aborted at the same time, first, second, and third trimester. And the picture on the cover was so graphic that they handed it with the back of the pamphlet showing, but it had a picture too, which were babies in a black plastic bag from abortions in a hospital in Canada. Remember that? And,
I do.
And that's the first thing I saw. And one of the babies in the corner of that black plastic bag looked like Eric, like Eric's baby picture. And that personalized it for me. These were bodies of babies well into development.
Yeah, they were late-term
abortions in Canada. And it just shocked me.
Yeah, so you started looking into abortion and researching, etc., prior to Roe v. Wade, not even knowing that those 2 cases were working their ways through the court system. And we in no way were expecting that January 22nd, 1973 would change our lives forever.
No, we didn't.
And the lives of so many, the unborn, number one, who are now so vulnerable.
Yeah. It was a shock to me when the decisions came down. I was working, as I say, as an account executive, but I was sick the day that it came out, so I didn't find out. And there were a lot of other things happening. The Vietnam War, I think President Johnson died.
He died that day,
day. And so the news, actually, the Roe v. Wade thing was back in the middle of the paper somewhere. And when I read it, I couldn't believe it. Remember that? It was just such a shock. I went to work, and that's when my boss saw that I was totally
I'd lost interest.
I'd lost interest in selling Marlite paneling and Shakespeare fishing.
Which ultimately was a good thing, because pro-life leadership is clearly where you belonged. So let's focus on that racketeer title yet again and see why do you call yourself a racketeer?
Well, because I was charged with racketeering. The National Organization for Women first charged me with violating the Sherman-Clayton antitrust laws, and we went a year or 2 in court on that, and they got nowhere with that, and it was thrown out. So they, instead of giving up, they then decided to try racketeering, influence, corrupt organization laws against me, and we didn't think they could use that. So we went to court to say they couldn't use it, and we had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And in fact, the court decided unanimously they could use the racketeering statute. That we had to go
So
to
that
trial.
sent it back to trial and years worth of making its way through the court system yet again. But at the district court level, the trial was 1998 and lasted for 7 weeks. And the end result was you became a racketeer.
Right. I was found guilty of racketeering. And so then we had to start fighting that.
Right.
Went back to the court, all the way back up to the court again. Actually, it's the only case, I think, on record in the history of the country that has been to the Supreme Court 3 times. A number of cases have gone twice, but 3 times to the Supreme Court. Because, but the trial, the trial wasn't 12 years after the original.
Things take a long time in the court system. So
I was given my notice in 1986, and the trial was
1998.
1998.
And the final Supreme Court ruling was in 2006. So it's spans a very long time.
And then we finally got a little settlement in 2015,
I believe it was. Yeah.
So most of my life.
But so even though the Supreme Court reversed the decision and kind of wiped out the title of racketeer, you've kind of latched onto that as a symbol, sort of what your pro-life activism has been. For one thing, it gets attention.
Yeah, I've kind of accepted the racketeer title.
Yeah.
And
so how much money did you make as an extortionist, Mr. Racketeer?
Well, I spent a lot of money. I don't think I made anything. So for a guy who's supposed to make a whole lot of money and pay triple damages when he's found
So
guilty,
you might have been a racketeer, but not really a very good racketeer. Not a very successul
a
racketeer.
terrible racketeer. Speaking of the income was very small. So
That's true. So you've spent 44 years now in the pro-life movement, fighting the culture of death, fighting the abortion lobby and the feminist, radical feminist pro-abortion agenda. This is one of the longest reigning pro-life leaders in the country, I think, at this point, isn't it?
I think so, yeah, because I hate to tell people my age, but in September.
Oh, you're proud of it. Go ahead.
In September, I'll hit 90, so I'm about halfway through the year. And anyway, we have to take a short break here. And so on Pro-Life Today, I'm Joe Sheidler.
And Ann Sheidler.
Ann Sheidler is questioning me on racketeer, what it means. And so we'll be right back to continue our conversation on WSFI. That's 88.5 FM Catholic Radio. So stay tuned. There's more to come. This is Joe Sheidler in Chicago. Want to learn some Latin? Well, here are 3 simple words that say it all. Ora et labora. That's the motto of the Benedictines, and that means pray and work. Pray for the 4,000 babies who will be cruelly killed in legal abortions today in American cities alone. But also work to end abortion. Pray and work. How do you work? Well, come out to an abortion clinic near you. Pray there, but also talk to the women going in. Offer them help. If you want to know how, give us a call. We're the Pro-Life Action League in Chicago. Call us at 773-777-2900. That's 773-777-2900. Hi, I'm Joe Sheidler. This is Pro-Life Today on WSFI. That's 88.5 FM Catholic Radio. We're going to continue our interview, and actually, I'm the guest today, right? The hostess is my wife, Ann Sheidler, and we're talking about Racketeer for Life, a book that I've just written, and which is making the rounds. And Ann, take it away.
I will do that. Just so our listeners know, if they're interested in reading Racketeer for Life, it's available on Amazon.com and in a lot of Christian bookstores, and also at the Pro-Life Action League office. If you want an autographed copy, you contact us at prolifeaction.org or call our office at 773-777-2900. That's 773-777-2900, and Joe can autograph the book for you. I'm going to take a little walk down memory lane here with your background. Before you got involved in pro-life work, you had a few different careers. But let's go back to your college days. You're a proud graduate of Notre Dame University in the days when Notre Dame was the premier Catholic university in America, perhaps in the world. What did you study at Notre Dame?
Well, actually, I got into what we called communication arts. It was journalism, but it was a very thorough course in history, in architecture, in science. It was an amazing course. In fact, it only lasted a few years because it was too hard on the professors. I mean, you were writing constantly. You had a paper due, I think, in every class every day, and then those papers were graded and handed back with corrections, and you might be working on 5 or 6 papers for a single class. And the professors, Tom Stritch was the head of the department, and Ed Fisher and Jim Withy, and some. There were only about 5 professors in that.
But top of the line. Teachers in writing and literature and communication.
Right. Ed Fisher alone did 16 books, and I don't know how many Tom.
Oh, well, you've got a few more to go then.
Yeah, I'm reading through them. They're great, too. But then I actually joined the faculty there later in communication arts, where they were still.
But before you went back to Notre Dame, you spent several years training for the priesthood.
Altogether, 8 years. Yeah, I had to do a refresher course and take philosophy, Gregorian chant, Greek, Latin, so on. And then I went into the major seminary in second philosophy and went all the way through first theology, and then I joined the monastery at St. Minor. I was Frater Gregory. And I was there, finished my full course in theology, and was ready for solemn vows and ordination to the priesthood when I went back to the diocese.
But God had other plans for you, didn't he?
It seems like it, because I did spend another year working in a parish, preparing for ordination. I was actually in Lafayette, Indiana, at the Newman Center there, working with my cousin, Father Leo Pickett.
At Purdue University.
Right, and a classmate, Father Leo Haggerty. And then it just became clear to me that that was not my calling. And so that's when I went back to Notre Dame and taught there for a few years.
And of course, you never would have thought, well, my calling is not to the priesthood. It must be to pro-life activist leadership.
No, I didn't know what pro-life activist leadership would even mean.
No, there was no pro-life movement even.
Not really.
Yet at that point. It was, abortion had been illegal from time immemorial, and attempts to liberalize it had gone no place for the most part, so that wouldn't have been something you aspired to.
No.
Back in those days. So you went back and taught at Notre Dame for a few years, and what led you to leave there?
Well, I needed further courses. I needed to get at least a master's degree, and so I found a course at Marquette in Milwaukee, and I went up there and took a crash course in teaching public speaking, and because that was one of my courses at Notre Dame, and got my master's degree. Then when I went back to Notre Dame to take my position back, they had brought in a substitute who they liked real well, And I thought, well, let's let the substitute just substitute permanently. And I was sort of tired of South Bend. And every time I would go through Chicago, I would stop, and that was my city. So I decided to look for a job in Chicago. And I had been in enough men's situations with the Navy and Notre Dame and the monastery and the seminary. So I decided to teach in a girls' school, a woman's school. And I was hired by Mundelein College. And
where I was a student.
You were a student.
How fortuitous.
And you were the social chairman or something, because I saw you all the time going to the tea room.
Yes.
The dining room. And you asked me one time where I was from, and I said around Fort Wayne. And you said, oh, Texas.
Oh, you're going to reveal my geographical ignorance.
Fort Wayne, Texas. I thought you meant Fort Worth. But anyway, we got to know each other, and you were in a play, a musical.
Yes, we had a variety show every year in the springtime at Mundelein, and I was in a chorus line in the variety show.
And I would come down and watch the rehearsals. And at one point, you said, "Hey, you!" You were with
yes.
all
Part of the routine was to point to the audience and call, "Hey, you!"
And you pointed right at me.
I guess I did.
Because I was the only one in the audience at the time.
That would help. Yes.
But I took that as a sign that I should get to know you. So one date led to another. I was pretending. Well, actually, I was looking for a car, sports car. And I thought you knew about sports cars. And
of course.
So we would go to the parking lots, and you'd be able to get me into a sports car sitting out on the lot. And I had to see if I could fit into it, because I'm kind of tall.
For our listeners, you might want to know Joe was 6'4", so fitting into a little sports car was kind of a tight squeeze.
You'd get the door open somehow. I don't know how you always did that. And then I would sit in it, and if my head touched the roof,
then it was too small.
Not for me.
Yeah.
Right. So what did I find? A little Fiat.
Well, I finally bought a little Fiat, which we had great fun with. But then we sold that car. We got married in 1965. Right. And for some reason thought we had to get a practical car, and sold that car, which we've regretted for like 50 years, I think.
I still regret it. Yeah, I love
But we've had
Fiat.
lots of practical cars that fit car seats when we had kids, and car seats for grandparents, and so practical cars have their purposes as well.
Yeah, we've had very practical cars since then.
Yeah.
But the little
also, vans are wonderful for carrying picket signs in when you have to go out and protest Planned Parenthood or your local abortion clinic. So, the sports car probably wouldn't have worked for that ultimately.
It'd be nice, though, to have it.
It'd be fun,
there.
but
we named it Amy, remember?
We did. We named the car. Yeah. Isn't that a weird thing to do?
Yeah.
I haven't named any of the practical cars.
No.
But that's beside the point. Some of the people you've met over the years of pro-life work have been major players, both on the national scene and the Catholic world. Everybody you meet in the pro-life movement is a saint. They're all just cream of the crop people, and it's been a blessing we didn't realize would come our way to have known all the people that we've known in the pro-life movement.
Well, I knew Mother Teresa.
You met
well.
Mother. Oh, tell the story of the Mother Teresa at the National Right to Life Convention.
Oh yeah, well, Mother Teresa. I was trying to sell a book I'd just written called "Closed."
Joe's first book.
99 Ways to Stop Abortion, and I had a big box of them, and I didn't get a booth to sell them. I just thought I could horn in on.
Well, I don't think they'd
else.
give you a booth.
No, I don't think they would. But I was trying to get somebody to sell, let me sit at the end of their table and sell them. And I couldn't find anybody, so I had this full box of books. So I thought, oh, Mother Teresa's talking upstairs. So I went upstairs, and I came in the wrong door. I came in right the door where she was standing, and people couldn't see her. She was so short, they could just see the top of her habit.
Behind the podium, you couldn't
behind
hardly
the
see
podium.
her.
So I just walked right up to her, and I said, "Here, Mother, stand on this." And I put my box of books right behind the podium, and she stood up on it, and everybody could see her. And they started applauding, and it made a big hit. So So then later on, I did sell the books, and now people who bought those books have a second-hand relic because she's Saint Mother
Because now
Teresa.
she's Saint Mother Teresa
Yeah.
of Calcutta.
So you never
Yes.
know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I wish we had at least one of them. We have a few copies of that book, but we don't know whether they were in that box or they weren't in that box.
No. Then I met Mother Angelica and was on when she still was just beginning. She was in a big warehouse.
Oh, I think she had you on to interview you about that book,
I think it
Closed,
was.
99 Ways to Stop Abortion.
Right, and we became kind of buddies. She was a
Yeah,
great gal.
she was a feisty
Yeah.
nun, that's for sure.
I met Ronald Reagan, had a meeting with him in the White House with other pro-life leaders, but I sat right across from him with my own jar of jelly beans.
Oh, that's right. yeah.
Remember that? And but he was dynamic and very pro-life, and we gave him 12 things we wanted him to do, cut out abortions in D.C. and so on, and he accepted our requests very graciously. He actually wrote a book about abortion.
Abortion and the Conscience of the Nation, I
Right.
think that was called.
Right, and then
Now, you met Saint Pope John Paul II. Now, look at that. You've met two saints in your lifetime.
yeah, probably more than
That's
that.
remarkable.
One of these days.
Probably more than that one of these days, yes.
Yeah, John Paul II, we had a nice meeting with him, and he said, asked me where I was from. I said Chicago, and he said, oh, Chicago, a very pro-life city. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that
would be
was
the thing.
interesting.
Because it wasn't just a pro-life meeting we were having. We were discussing the whole situation of the church and the problems it was having. But he was very gracious. And then when he came to Chicago, then he did visit a number of churches. We went down to see him. But at that time, we sang for him.
We sang. Joe and I were in the choir for his Mass in Grant Park, which was a standout, fabulous event in
Over 1 million
1979.
people there.
He'd only been the Pope for less than a year, I think,
That's right.
at that point.
We were right next to
Yeah,
him.
what an honor that was.
It was great too, and you had to there were only so many voices from the whole diocese, and so I had to go out. I'm a baritone, but I signed up as a tenor.
Yeah.
Because they needed
You identified as a tenor.
just so I could get into the choir. But that was good because you had the melody. I think I'll stay as a tenor because
yeah.
and you were in the choir, so that was a lot of fun. It's all the time we have, I guess.
That went
today.
fast, didn't it?
So thanks to my guest, Ann Sheidler.
Or my guest, Joe Sheidler.
And so join us again. Until then, from all of us at WSFI 88.5 FM Catholic Radio, I'm Joe Sheidler. Thanks for listening.
This is Ann Sheidler. My husband Joe has just written his memoir of 44 years as a pro-life activist called Racketeer for Life, Fighting the Culture of Death from the Sidewalk to the Supreme Court. If you'd like to read what it's like to protest in front of an abortion clinic or to sit in a federal court accused of racketeering, get Joe's book. Go to prolifeaction.org to order your copy, and he'll autograph it for you. That's prolifeaction.org.
Thank you for listening to WQPH's Local Matters. We hope you enjoyed the broadcast and hope you have a blessed week.